Welcome once again to the J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with ink, pen and ink. So have your kneaded eraser, a number 2 or an HB pencil handy, and any type of ink that you would like to use. But make sure that it's archival, that it's permanent, that it's black, and a smooth ink. I probably recommend a Pigma Micron pen. They come in various colors and sizes, but whatever you feel comfortable with, have that nice and handy. And let's start doing some ink drawing.
So you should have your Pigma Micron pen, a number 2 pencil, or any pencil really will work, but the number 2 doesn't go as dark, and your kneaded eraser. And remember, everything we do with this number 2 pencil gets erased. You guys know how to clean your kneaded erasers, right? That's how you clean it. So the first thing we need to do is figure out where everything goes. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of start out and say, well, I like her arm and her shoulder is kind of relates to the edge of my paper there. So I'm going to just kind of block it in and say, well, if her hand is about right down in there and her arm's up in there somewhere, that kind of gives me a place to put her. The rest of her is going to go up in here somewhere. I'm going to leave some space over here. And there's nothing wrong with leaving a little bit of space, as long as it's not too much. So her head, though, should be pretty close to the top of my page. So about up into here. And if that's where her hand is, then you can kind of figure out about how big that head is going to be. So about right in there. You need just this little kind of egg shape. I always leave myself a little bit of space up at the top in case that hair goes up too far. I always add more hair than I think is probably necessary. Leave a little bit of space for her neck, and then her shoulders are at a slight angle like this. There is I don't know if you guys like photography or sculpture, but there is a method of sculpting or taking pictures of people where they're a little more interesting to look at, and it has to do with the shift of the body. It's called contrapposto. Contrapposto is an Italian term, and it means a shifting of the body. So she's kind of got that, the shoulders are kind of one way, you know. She's not extreme contrapposto, but it's interesting. There's an arm over there. There's her body coming down here. And I'm just drawing it as fast as I can, using simple shapes. This arm over here is on our right side, her left arm, is foreshortened. You know what foreshortened means? If you look at a pencil like this and it curves up towards you, it becomes foreshortened. So that's what foreshortening is. Anytime you have body parts that are coming towards you, they become foreshortened. And usually they get larger as they come towards you, depending on the lens and things. But in any case, so that hand kind of obscures the arm that's behind it. So you know it's back in there. And so we'll just kind of leave it like that. Now I'm just going to start blocking in things with my pencil. And if that's the size of her head, that arm needs to go a little bit lower. Remember, when you're drawing, If you don't get it right the first time and you think, oh, it needs to go somewhere else, draw it first and then erase it. Don't erase it and then draw it again, because usually you draw it wrong again. You lose your point of reference when you do that. Now, what is most important here is her face. So we're going to spend a little extra time on her head to get her face just right. Then everything else will fall into place. So I'm going to zoom into her head, and we're just going to try to get all the proportions correct there. Now, you guys are lucky that she's not looking straight at you, but sometimes those half-closed eyes are a little difficult to do. I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I can kind of see where her hair goes. Hair's not that big of a deal. You can adjust that up and down, but you want to get the eyes, the nose, the mouth pretty much where they're supposed to go. So in order to do that, I'm first of all going to just say, well, if that's her hairline right about in there, and somewhere in here is that little crown thing, kind of an elvish looking crown, probably is a Lord of the Rings kind of a thing. So it might be up in there. And because her head is down, looking down, you got to remember that everything's going to curve like this, because we're looking at the top of her head here. So everything kind of curves down. So even her eyebrows are not going to be straight across from each other. They're going to look a little bit like they curve down. I'm just blocking in the eyes, the little shapes for the eyes. And because we're looking down on her, that nose is going to feel a little bit longer. Sometimes we go overboard with that, so don't go overboard with it. And that nose is just going to be this little shape, kind of a V shape or a U shape, kind of a squished U shape. There is a little cast shadow of her nose down there, and then just below that is the mouth. The bottom lip, don't worry about the bottom lip. Just put this little shadow under it. Little spot of darkness there. Now you look at it and you can adjust it up and down. Is that too long, too short? You know, adjust it, whatever you feel like you need. You should kind of trust your feelings too, your senses. Because as you look at that, you might say to yourself, oh, well, that chin might be too big or too small. Try to adjust it. It's important that this part is fairly correct. People, when they look at your drawing, they judge you on the face. So you want that face to be pretty darn close. About even with her eyes, because she's looking down, her ears are going to kind of go up. About even with her eyes are where her ears are. So I'm just going to kind of come over, and I see that little ear right there, a little bit above the eyebrow. So there's one there. And I can barely see one on the other side. Barely, barely. Her earring is kind of more of what I see. There's a little earring that hangs down there. And a little bit of the hair over there. There's a little bit of hair right there that defines the chin as well. I'm also going to block in like where her necklace goes, the edge of her dress there, just because. I'll show you an easy way to do like necklaces or pearls or things that are kind of stuck together. I'll show you an easy way to do those with your ink pen. You are so welcome. And that necklace, you can see it kind of coming up and touching her chin right there. That helps to define her neck. But I'm just going to start out with this eye, and I'm going to just start out with a very slight arch. Very slight arch. It's almost straight across, but it's not quite. Very slight arch. I'm going to put a little triangle right there and a little triangle on this side. That represents then the eyelashes. And your eyelashes are kind of covering up your eye there so that it's a little darker. But because your eye is looking down, you're only going to see a very small portion of your iris. So there's a little dot there. I don't know if I can get in any closer to that. Let me see if I can. There we go. Little dot there. A little dot on this side. And then the eye is very dark. Because she's not looking at you, you probably can't see a shine in there. I'm just going to hatch through that. Now the rest of the eye is in shadow as well. And so I might need one or two little dots in there. I'm just going to start out with one dot there and one dot there. Maybe two dots. I'm going to do the same thing on this eye. Now remember, you've got one eye distance in between the eyes. So if this eye is that long, then you've got that same length, and you can use your pencil to measure or whatever, but this length, that length there, and then another one over here. This one, you can see a little bit more of that eye, so I'm going to start out with a little darker triangle, a little more arch. Little dot there, little dot over here, hatch through that, barely. And there's the eyes. Now to make them look open, we need a little bit of a shadow underneath. There is a little bit of light that hits that right there and right there. So we're just leave that out and do a little shadow underneath, little hatched lines. Dots and dashes, that's all you need, dots and dashes. Now up above her eye, you can see her eyelid, and there's a little light right there. So rather than draw like a little line, I'm just going to draw these little hatched lines from here. And I'm going to stop, and I'm going to hatch through that just barely, little dots and dashes. And then I'm going to pick that up on the other side. And there's that shadow that's over the eye into the bridge of the nose. I'm going to do that on the other eye. I'm going to start out with the bridge of the nose. It's over here. I'm going to hatch through that. I'm going to leave out the shine on the eyelid. And just kind of keep hatching through there until you get to the other side. And I can put in eyebrows, just these little scribbly kind of marks that go out towards the side of the head because your hair kind of flows that way. And if it's really dark, just keep adding a little bit of line until you're happy with it. And you may want to say, well, her eye is a little darker there. She's got this eyeshadow in there. Maybe I'm going to hatch through that and darken in that section just a little bit. The other side, I'm going to do that same thing with the eyebrow. There's the eyebrow. Scribble, scribble, scribble. And maybe hatch through a little bit more, because it's kind of dark right in there. Now she's got eyelashes, so I'm going to just take her eye and I'm just going to come out ever so slightly with little eyelashes. And now she's looked like she's scowling. She's looking down. We can add more lines and dots according to whatever it is that you need. Now the bridge of the nose, don't worry about the bridge of the nose here. Don't ever, ever draw a line down the nose. So instead, come and pick up the bottom edge of the nose where the shadow is and just hatch through that. Look at the nostril, and it gets a little thinner, and then you have that cast shadow that's right there. I'm just going to hatch through that. Hatch, 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 hatch. Gets a little thinner, and then cast shadow. And there is a shadow that's right there, but don't draw a line. I'm going to use these little hatched lines. Start here and just go up. You can use little dots and dashes, but don't do too much. Now I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. Right underneath the nose, right there, there's a nostril. So I'm just going to add a few little dots and dashes. Maybe a little bit over on this side. Dots and dashes till it's what I want it to be. If you wanted that little shape that comes off the nose right there, do some little dots and dashes, maybe about like 5, like, something about like that. You don't need too much. And the mouth, corners of the mouth first. If you come straight down off the middle of the eye, that's about where the corner of the mouth is going to go, about right down in there. I'm just going to do these little hatched lines there. And then there's the corner of the mouth there, corner of the mouth here. And you want to dip it down in the middle. So you get this little shape there. And then dots and dashes. Don't draw lines around it. Just little dots and dashes to smooth it out. And that's it. The bottom lip, if you wanted to add a few little dots and dashes to the sides, to the corners, but just that bottom lip, you just need a little bit of shadow in there. Some dots and dashes, you got it. Now, yes, we're going to have to come back into this, but we've established where everything is. That's what's important. So the chin has this shadow that's under there. There's a couple ways you can do that. I'm just going to go ahead and delineate the chin by this nice round edge there. There is a shadow that kind of runs up over here where her hair is. So I can pick up that shadow. This is a little triangle. And I can come up here and say, well, I can see another little shadow up there. And there's another one right up in here somewhere. And then there's hair, picks up in there. But that shadow that's down under her chin, maybe I'm going to just kind of pick up that shadow, little dots and dashes. Here's that shadow. Kind of comes down there. And don't worry about the necklace yet. We'll get the necklace in there later. There's that shadow. And again, we'll have to come into that. I already know that. But that kind of helps us to figure out where everything goes. If you want to do a little shadow up this side, it's the same thing, these little hatched lines. I'm going to start out very simple. Little hatched lines like that. And then I'm going to go in between those and do a couple more hatched lines, because there's that core shadow that runs down her cheek. That'll give you the illusion that you've got a core shadow there. I'm going to pick up her chin up here. Maybe you could put a little dot or a dash up there and just say, well, that's where the chin is. And I can see that that neck kind of comes off of there. There is, I don't know what that earring is, but it's just a rounded shape. Put in that little rounded shape. A couple little dots and dashes. Some darkness in there. There's the earring. And down here, she's got a cheekbone there too, and I may want to just scratch in just a couple little lines there, just to show where that cheekbone goes. Very light, thin, scratchy lines. Her little crown, it's so bright, it's so light that maybe all I'm going to do is just do the illusion that I can see it. So I'm just going to come in. I see this little A kind of shape right there. Add that in. Kind of comes across. A little shape there. This one comes out here. I really can't see what's going on there, everything, but I'm just kind of pretending that I can see it. And then if you've got little dark shapes in between, I'm going to do the in-between and just leave out the rest of it. Again, once we get this part done, the rest of it we can breathe a little sigh of relief and relax. Here's a little pearl. I'm not exactly sure what it looks like, but I'm going to throw it in as a little half circle and a little dot in the middle. I think this is one in the middle here too, but I don't know. Not that big of a deal. Throw that in. I can always come back in and add more. Like I say, I'm not exactly sure what's going on up in there. I'm just kind of pretending I know. If it's really light, just leave it out. I'm
I'm going to crosshatch through the shadow under her chin. It's pretty dark. And I might need to add some more there too. Whenever you're doing hair, you start out from the scalp, wherever the hair starts, and instead of doing like a line and then filling it in, you start out there and you just do these little lines like this, trying to figure that out where that hair goes. You can come toward it or go away from it, or a little of both. And that way you kind of figure out where the hair starts. And if you need to add more, it's easy to add more. But if you drew a line, you're stuck with it. And that's what frustrates people, is they draw a line and then they're like, oh, what do I do with that now? They're stuck with it. Her hair is dark, so you can just scribble through that whole bit of the hair. I'm just going to, this whole section where the hair is, I'm just going to hatch through it, even through the crown, because you know it's fairly dark too. So there's lots you can do, but I'm just going to hatch through that and just keep hatching through it until it's as dark as you want it, or the shape that you want it. Her ear, one thing about her ear is you want to really kind of simplify the ear a little bit. So as I go through, I'm saying, okay, I see where that ear goes. I see that there's a little curve there. There's also a little shadow right there, and it's this little curved kind of triangle. You just throw that in. And as I come down, I'm going to just skip that, leave it out completely. There's some hair that comes down here. She's got a little braid that's coming down there. Any other sections that you can see, just hatch those in. But the rest of the ear, you could pretty much just leave it out. So I'm going to allow the hair here to define the neck. I'm just going to kind of keep it going down, trying to kind of go in the flow of the hair. There is a little shine there. If you want to put in that little shine by just leaving it out. This is how you do blonde hair. Darker hair is a little easier because you can just scribble through it. But I can just kind of start out with the dark areas into the light. And if it's dark hair like this, you just got to keep going. Just keep going. And eventually it'll get as dark as you want it to go. Same thing on the top of the hair. You know, rather than draw a line around it, just keep that hair flowing in the direction it goes. And the edge will take care of itself. So she got that little thing of hair coming down there too. I'm just going to throw that in with this little zigzaggy kind of line. You don't have to worry about it being braided. Here's her earring. There's another one. And all those little scratchy lines that we threw in to begin with, they're starting to fade away and get kind of together. You ready for the necklace? Necklace is pretty easy. Really, all it is you're doing these little U shapes, and the closer you get to the neck, the tighter those little U shapes are. So I'm just going to come around. I'm just going to go one. There's one right there. And then as you get farther away, because on the bottom it's a shadow. On the top, you don't even have to worry about the top. You can do a little dot. So I'm just going to do little dots in between. Add a little bit more on the bottom too if you need to. Just a couple little dots on the top and you got it. You can kind of see her clavicle coming in here. That's the little bone, your collarbone. So I'm just going to throw that in with a little bit of a hatched line like this. Kind of continues on over here. I'm going to try to get rid of my graphite as much as I can. I haven't finished the hair yet, but that graphite is really bugging me. So I'm just going to get rid of that graphite, especially in the head. Now I can go back into it and feel some confidence about getting that dark hair in there. And right here, it's lighter, so as you bring the darkness into it, you just kind of lighten up right there. Don't put as much line into it. And if it's really dark, you can just scribble through it. Scribble, 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 scribble. So over here, I'm just going to do some little shapes in between. Give it the illusion that that crown is still over there. Whew, head's just about done. We'll go back into it and do some more on it. But now I'm going to do the little collar part, and the rest of it, that white dress, is going to go really fast. When you're doing patterns, like in this braided collar, don't worry about each little pattern. Just give it the illusion that you kind of know what you're doing there. So I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to pick out the edge of the pattern. And then just scribble in some little darks and lights. This is called Celtic knotwork, and it's where it's like a ribbon. It flows in and out and in and out and in and out, over and under, over, under, over, under. So I kind of know what's going on with it, but because it's
so far away, I can just kind of hatch through it like this to get some darks, and then just little spots of dark and light through it. Not a problem. I guess if you really wanted to put in that Celtic knotwork, you definitely could, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. So I'm just trying to get an idea of the pattern without having to draw the whole pattern in. That's a lot of work. Just leaving little sections out. Some of it is really bright. You can leave a lot out, and others you can just hatch through it. Like this whole section here, I could probably just hatch through all of that. And whatever's left. A few little spots of light and dark. She's got that thing around her arms as well and down her sleeves. And do the same kind of technique there. So it's just the idea that it's there. I didn't follow a pattern. Although you might look at it and think I did. Here's little braids hanging down. There's these little scribbly lines. Again, we can go back into those and do more if we need to. Here's the fun part. The fun part is the dress, because there's so much that you can leave out. So I'm just going to try and pick out the shadows and throw those in as little shapes. So I can see that little shape over here. I'm just going to throw that in. The lighter it is, the less the line. If it goes a little darker, down more line. And if there's a wrinkle that's not quite in the right place, that's okay. That's the other good thing about this. You know, if you put the eye in the wrong place, everybody knows it. But you put a wrinkle in the wrong place, you just try to get as close as you can. And again, I'm skipping so much. Just leave it out. When in doubt, leave it out. Here's that other darn Celtic knotwork thing around her arm. Again, I'm just pretending that I know what I'm doing. Scribble, scribble, scribble. A little dark here, a little dark there. I may want to put in the buttons on her sleeve. So I'm going to zoom out of mine here. And the rest of this should go pretty quick. I want to get down that sleeve because I want to show you a technique about doing hands. They're really easy to do. So don't fret too much about hands. This is her hair that's back in here. So I'm just going to do the rest of her hair. That's her hair. Notice how much of her sleeve I've skipped. The outside, though, it has that dark edge, so I'm going to put in the little button-looking things, whatever they are. You know what's really weird is I know what this sleeve is, and I know what it does. That's what's weird. Okay, you ready for the hand? I'm going to zoom into this hand here. All you need with the hand are the shadows on the fingertips and just little dots and dashes where the knuckles are. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to come over here and say, well, I see this shadow that kind of comes down her hand right there on the dress. I'll throw that in. And then where the thumb is, I'm just going to put this little curve. There's a little shadow right there. Sometimes you can see the thumbnail, and it's just little dots and dashes. And that might come up into the sleeve right there where it's... And then there's some hatch lines down the thumb, and that's it. There's a thumb. And if you wanted to hatch through some of it to make it a little darker, you still could. That's it. The rest of that, there's a shadow under the thumb, and there's the fingertip. So you want to do a little shadow where the fingertip is. And then where the knuckle is, do this little couple little dots and dashes, and you got it. There's the finger. Here's another one over here. There's a little knuckle there, little dots and dashes. But don't draw lines, then they look like gaps in between. You want your fingers kind of like teeth. Whenever you do teeth, you don't want to do gaps in the teeth. Last but not least, the last finger. There's the knuckle. There's another knuckle there. And you got it. I'm going to hatch through the back of the hand because there's a little darkness there. But otherwise, that's about it. Okay, easiest fingers you've ever done. All right, let's do the other hand, and then the dress will just fall into place. I'm just going to outline the finger and the thumb by the dark edge that's right there on her trim there. There's a finger right there. There's a little tip of the thumb. The rest of it kind of blends into that pattern that's back in there. Oh, that is her thumb right there. That's the tip of her thumb. Huh. There's part of the finger there and right next to the knuckle. So just two little dots. And it kind of comes down and you say, okay, there's another one right there. And next to the knuckle. There's another one right there. And the last one, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure she's got 4 fingers. Not like Mickey Mouse. It's only got 3. Now, here's the knuckles. You kind of come up and you say, well, there's a little knuckle right there and a little knuckle right there. Knuckle right there and one right there. Then you hatch through that whole thing in the shape of the back of her hand, which is kind of a triangle. And that's it. Anything else, you just do the little shadows around it and you got it. If you can't see the edge of the cloth, don't put it in there. Just leave it out. Just little hatches, dots and dashes. She's got kind of a cool belt on. She's got kind of a Celtic knotwork belt too. It's kind of cool. But I'm just going to scribble through it. Not really trying to get a pattern. Scribbling through it. Just about ready to get rid of the graphite. Now, getting rid of all that graphite makes it nice and clean. Get rid of all that sketchy stuff. And those edges that we left are now clean and clear, and your eye still can make those connections where those edges are, but we didn't have to draw them in. But if you think about it and you go, I need something in there, you can add whatever you want to. Sometimes you need it.
Good place for a signature is right down where the fold of the dress is, right there. That's a great place for a signature. The last thing you do is just try to touch up any place that you feel like you need to. Hopefully you had a fun experience today and learned something maybe, and even tried something that you've never done before. And hopefully somewhere along the way it's made your life a little bit better, because art makes life better.